Welcome to Rumors versus Facts, the UGA Sports recruiting show where we try to disseminate through all the rumors that are out there and actually give you factual information of what's going on. My name is Rodney DeBulsey. I'm joined by Lance Curley and Jed May. We appreciate you joining us. We normally do the show Mondays at 8:30, but we moved it today because Lance and Jed were really busy. So, I mean, I guess they could have done it, and then we would have had all those updates at UGAsports.com, or we'd have had them a day late. But we like to get that stuff out quick. We like to take care of our readers at UGA Sports. So, but they've been doing crazy updates on the vault. There's a ton of visitors in there. Before the game was over, Lance had a photo gallery up that showed a lot of the top guys in it. Then the next day, starting that night, even though it was a late night, you guys started getting out recruit reactions. Mm-hmm. I can't think of a better game for all the recruits to come see. I mean, top 10 matchup, and Georgia kicks ass on offense, defense, even special teams. I mean, even if there's a punter in that group, a kicker, a long snapper, he's like, man, I got to be part of this team. But defensively, you saw Ole Miss rack up almost 200 yards in the first quarter. They were moving. Then defense shut them down. That's enough of that. Offensively, 611 yards and 61 plays.
Yeah, and I mean, Kirby has mentioned before, like from a coaching perspective, like noon games are really good for recruiting because you get the game done, you're wrapped up at 4:30, and you can spend time with recruits after that. But other than that, like you said, it's perfect. Defensive recruits that I've talked to impressed by the defense, the coaching staff adjustments, those kind of things to stop Ole Miss. Obviously, offensive players are 600 yards, the balance, the pass, talking to receivers, talking to linemen, talking to all these guys, they're
running backs had to be happy.
And then you've got the crowd. Night games give you the chance, especially after the time change, to show off the lights, the LED lights and all that kind of stuff. So you really couldn't draw it up a whole lot better to get a huge, talented group of guys in town.
Lance, I do recall seeing some former Georgia football players down there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Jordan Davis. I mean, I got a great picture of Nolan Smith, kind of like hyping up and hugging some of his former teammates that were seniors that were down there in the line, ready to be called out for their last game. Keely Ringo was there, Stetson was there. It was awesome to see all of those guys, and it kind of talks about the culture that they're welcome back, and even exactly. Even Coach Rick was honored, I think, during sometime during the first or second quarter. And, you don't see, a lot of former head coaches come back after they were let go. So just the relationships that Georgia and Kirby has kept over the last few years is just nothing short of amazing to see.
Well, that's kind of my point. I'm not just, celebrity gazing that those guys came back, but if you're a recruit and you see former first-round draft picks coming back to their alma mater, jumping up and down with the guys that are coming out of the smoke, they're into it, they're rooting for them. Heck, some of them are recruiting. Some of those former players are like, hey, buddy, I know you're class of 2026. It's going to be a few years before you get here, but let me tell you about what Georgia did for me. Here's a wad of cash I'm sitting on because I went there. So I'm just saying it turned out to be a perfect weekend for recruiting. The weather sucked, all that, but I'm just saying it wasn't a nip. And now here's the thing: if it had been a close game, Kirby could have turned that to his advantage and said, "Look, this wouldn't have been close if we had you as a member of our squad. So win or lose." But this crowd goes absolutely berserk. Especially when they announced Brock Bowers as a starter, which you would have known if you read UGAsports.com. But it's neither here nor there. But seeing a night game, and a true night game, not one of those 3:30 ones that kind of lingers on into the night game, but dark right off the bat, crowd going crazy, former players, plenty of time, as you said, to spend with the coaches, and that's just a big one. So speaking of, let's look at. Hang on a second. Let me add this. So who all was there? And we have a list of UJ Sports with all the different, not all the people, but the vast majority of them. You guys had a great list before they came in. But let's kind of go through some names here. Tell me about who they are.
Yeah, well, you see Amari Adams on the on the front page there. He's a top 100 defensive tackle, class of 25 from South Carolina. He also visited for, I want to say it was the South Carolina game earlier this year. And he's, you're on the field, like Lance, obviously you're down there before the games and all the recruits come down the stairs and go down to the field. Some guys are in the locker room beforehand and they kind of come out a little bit before, the rest of the guys come downstairs. Amari Adams was one of those guys on Saturday night. He came out on the field a little early. I'm sure got some quality time with Trey Scott. So he's a guy to watch. And he says, again, they really liked that they rotated the defensive line almost every drive. And some guys, it's talked about at receiver a lot. Guys want to play a lot. They want to be on the field all the time. But as far as rotating on the defensive line, that's a selling point. I guess one, for a freshman, hey, you can work your way into the rotation. B, you're going to have a little more tread on your tires when you get to the NFL. So that was a big visit there for Amari Adams.
Mm-hmm. Ryan Mosley's another guy who's a Carrollton wide receiver who I saw him and several other Carrollton players sitting second row, kind of in the middle of the end zone with 5-star, 2026 QB Juju Lewis, who's currently committed to USC.
Nice. What about this Hezekiah Harris guy? I love the old name, Hezekiah.
Yeah, there's actually, I believe he's Kent from Brunswick is also a Hezekiah, I think. So that's got to be a record for Hezekiahs in Athens at the one time. But
maybe not 130 years ago.
Yeah, that Yale game in 1929 was big on Hezekiahs. But they were looking at the edge, Hezekiah Harris, and he what more, you see Marvin Jones, you see Damon Wilson. Damon Wilson in particular doing what he's doing as a freshman. I know, this is kind of down the list a little bit, but Bryce Davis from North Carolina is very impressed with Damon Wilson, Sam Mpemba, Marvin Jones, like I mentioned. So, good to get those guys involved, get some pressure on the quarterback. And, Damon Wilson has one play every game where he comes flying off the edge and sometimes gets held and forces the ball to be thrown away or whatever. So he's a good guy to point to the younger guys for sure.
You mentioned Julian Lewis earlier. I was scrolling down for him, and there's so many names on this, folks. I know if you're trying to pause and read it all because it's behind the paywall, just pay your 27 cents and join the site. It's 27 cents a day to be a member at ujsports.com. But Juju Lewis visiting again, and says the rolling, they look great. Coach Bobo has been dialing it up for weeks now, was his comment. Was he just coming to check out a good game, or do you think Georgia's got any shot at pulling this kid away from USC? Now, granted, he's got 2 more years. He's a class of 2026, but this is an elite player. He's the number 1 player in the nation from Georgia. I mean, he's from Georgia, but he's number 1. And if you talk to people, they're like, is that next Deshaun Watson, type guy, just an absolute difference maker. But this isn't the first time he's visited.
No, I want to say his third visit this year, I think, Lance, right?
Yeah, I think so. And we also confirmed that he stuck around and spent the night in Athens and had breakfast with the coaching staff. I think it was Coach Bobo. I don't know where they ate, but I think that that relationship is kind of building. And I mean, he can change his commitment 5 or 6 times in the next 2 years, but it's always good to kind of keep those in-state guys, especially at the quarterback position, close rather than, push them away, even though they're committed to, another school.
And you never know what's going to happen at that other school. You never know what's going to happen to this one. I mean, people were panicking that there was a plane that landed at Ben Epps. It's it's going to College Station. It's taking which Georgia coach is going out there being looked at? I'm like, all the Georgia coaches are going to be looked at. Mike Bobo is putting up 40-something points a game. Just dropped a 50-burger on one of the best teams in the nation. Glenn Schumann is an absolute up-and-comer. Guys that are committed to them, they're looking to play for them. You don't know what's going to happen, especially when you get 2 more years to go. So I agree with you. It doesn't hurt to have that guy hanging around and seeing those games, seeing that night game. The more you're at a place, sometimes the more you can see yourself there.
Mm-hmm.
Then sometimes when guys are committed for like a year and a half, they get a little bored and then go somewhere else. You never know what's going to happen. As folks, as you can see, if you're watching us, if you're listening to the podcast, you're not seeing all these names on there, but let me back up a little bit. You got Braylon Womack, Anthony Jones, Jordan Allen, the wide receiver from Buford, LeBron Bauer.
Really good.
Yeah.
He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he is really, really, really good.
Can they pull a kid out of Allen, Texas? I've heard about LaDainian Guyton for a long time. I mean,
Friday night.
He's I don't say a child, but class of 2027. I'm already hearing about this guy forever.
Absolute monster. I mean, Lance, you're going to see him Friday night at Morgan County. He is a baller.
Absolutely can't wait.
So wait, 2027 is going to be a true freshman, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a true freshman.
It's like 14
in high school, there's only freshmen, but again, the people talk about him, and it's just I'm hearing it everywhere. Let's see who else you got in here. Trey Alexander, the BYU commit. What's BYU commit doing down here?
Yeah, it was very interesting because Georgia, or he posted that he was visiting Athens on, I think, Thursday night maybe. And he's like, yeah, Georgia's been in contact. They're looking at me at, he says corner, but he could play either position. And, Quincy Carter, he's from Southwest DeKalb. Quincy Carter went to Southwest DeKalb. And he said Quincy Carter is helping out coach the football team this year. So he's really close with Quincy Carter, which is kind of an interesting wrinkle there. So Georgia hasn't, I don't think, offered. I don't believe. So obviously that's kind of the next step. But anytime you get a 2024 guy visiting this late in the process,
exactly, that's what fascinating.
Definitely worth taking note of, especially when it's at a position that Georgia's still probably looking to add at least one more guy. So that's one to watch. Like, I'm sure they discussed his potential fit and all that kind of stuff while he was in Athens. So, I think the next week or two is going to be really interesting to see if that Georgia offer does come. And if it does, he's got, I believe, you want to scroll back up there, right? I think he's like 6'1", 6'2". We got him at down there.
6'2", 165.
Yeah. So
tall, skinny.
Yeah. So sounds like a corner to me. So, and I know Marcel.
Give me any quarterback out of Southwest DeKalb.
That's one. I mean, he's not the biggest name on the board necessarily, but ranking the most interesting visitors of the weekend, I think he's probably up there just because he's a guy that I honestly, to be honest with you, had never really heard of until he shows up on campus. So it's going to be interesting to see if anything comes of that over the next couple of weeks.
That's why you only ranked him as a 3-star.
Right. 3-star is kind of my default. And then if I've heard of you, we kind of go up from there. So
that bomb, that jet bomb.
And Cortez Smith, the big guard, big boy.
He's always in Athens, dude. He's always there.
Yeah,
earlier this year, I asked him if he was visiting a game, and he was like, nah, people have told me I need to go to other places. So I'm going to – I forget which game, Florida maybe, but he is in Athens a lot. I like where Georgia's at with him right now.
That quote, the game was awesome as usual.
Yeah. He's been to so many – he's always there. Practices – spring practices, games. That dude lives in Athens.
It's just down the road too.
Yeah. Defensive tackle Christian Garrett was in town out of Prince Avenue.
Another kid just down the road out of Monroe.
Yeah.
He's a beast in the 25 class.
Got no problem with bringing a Prince Avenue kid over there. Although they did, they always whipped my boys over at Athens Christian's tail. So kind of still a little mad at him about that. Dwayne Galloway out of Columbus, Ohio. That's a long trip.
Mm-hmm. I spoke with him on the phone. He had a blast. And he's another one of those kids that Georgia's looking at down the road. In multiple different positions.
Galloway had an update with our national guy Clint Cosgrove, and he said, "Yeah, Georgia is on top right now. Georgia's in the lead in my recruitment." So
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so he's a 25 guy. Like he's not committing tomorrow. Like he got offered by Tennessee, I want to say yesterday. So it and he was he's very excited about it. So he's been waiting on it for a long time. So still a ways to go. But he's a guy that has kind of blown up this year, with a really strong junior season. So his recruitment is still pretty early. But Georgia is in a good spot there early on.
Maybe 4-star, good-looking kid, 6'1", 175 at corner.
Tall, skinny guy.
Yeah, about to say tall, skinny guy. Georgia loves him, and of course, if he can move, then they'll really love him. Now, I know you got Marcellus Barnes on here, but I want to hold him off because that to me is like maybe the most. I don't say the most fascinating visitor, but he is another one of those 2024 guys committed somewhere else that Georgia got in here. But we have a whole breakout story on him, so we'll save him for a little bit later in the show. Ryan Mosley, this kid, I've heard his name pop up a couple times recently. Greg Smith put him on the list.
Yeah, shout out to our guy Greg, and he's Juju Lewis at Carrollton's got a group of really good receivers. Mosley is one. Caleb Odom, the Alabama commit, 24, is like a receiver tight end, and
that guy's a monster.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Juju Lewis is not a one-man show at Carrollton.
No.
Those guys. I mean, Georgia hadn't offered Mosley, they hadn't offered Ward, but those are guys definitely to keep in mind for offers down the line. Show up in the spring, show up in the summer, work out, and get an offer. And listen, to be honest, that wouldn't hurt Georgia's case trying to get Julian Lewis down the line either. So
yeah,
Georgia's not going to take one guy just to land another, but those kind of things they don't hurt.
No. I did see him at that Carrollton game I covered. I was trying to put he didn't have his picture on there, so I was like, name. Oh, then I remembered his number. Got it. I had Jaden Hamilton out of Southwest Mississippi Community College. There's another.
Yes, there's 3 official visitors: Jaden Hamlin, junior college defensive lineman; Bryant Taylor, junior college defensive lineman; and then Nasir Johnson out of Dublin, defensive lineman. So Hamlin, we haven't heard it's one of those we always say, Rowdy, like, you're not going to have a bad official visit necessarily, but some visits don't really generate the traction that others do. That's kind of the feeling we're getting with Hamlin coming out of this one. Georgia didn't necessarily make a huge move, so out of that group of 3 defensive linemen, I'd probably put him third most likely to end up in Athens. But with Brian Taylor on the flip side of the scale, I think Georgia did a really good job with him this weekend, selling development, selling. They kind of see him as a Micah Williams type, and that's kind of the vision. And he bought into the. He said, if I were to commit to Georgia, I would know I'd be going there. I'm going to win. I'm going to get developed. I'm going to get.
You're getting ahead of us. So we got a whole story on him. We'll pull it out in just a second. Yeah. Elijah Griffin, same thing. You got a great story with him. Number 1 player in the nation. Again, number one player in the nation from Georgia. So I'm seeing a theme here. The number 1 player currently is in Georgia for 2024.
3 number 1 players in 3 different classes, all in Athens this weekend.
Absolutely insane. I'm going to be seeing Elijah Griffin on Friday night as well as in Guyton.
Okay. We'll mention him again. Breon Taylor, same thing. You were just talking about him. Great. I'll break that out in just a second. Cameron Sparks, I know we got a big story coming up on him. Tell me a little bit about Sparks, this 6'4" athlete out of Chattanooga.
So Sparks, I completely went into the interview just thinking that he's mainly just being recruited as a linebacker. And then I totally forgot. I was like, we have listed as an athlete at Rivals. And I was like, so you play receiver? And he was like, yeah, UGA and a lot of schools are actually recruiting me to play receiver more than linebacker. And he has a unique relationship with the Muschamp family, Will Muschamp. And Whit Muschamp, because he plays at the Baylor School in Chattanooga with Whit, Will Muschamp's son, who's committed to Vanderbilt. I don't know if they traveled to the game together. I believe they did, but I think that Whit is doing a good job of helping sell Cam to Georgia. And Cam basically said that Georgia is an NFL factory. I asked him, I was like, so, what's Georgia's pitch to you? And he was like, Georgia doesn't have to pitch to me. Like, Georgia's just an NFL factory. Like, he was like, I love the coaches, love the atmosphere. And I mean, I think he told me he doesn't have like a top 5, top 10, but he definitely says Georgia will be in that top whatever number of schools when he releases it.
Got like it. Number 43 player in the nation, number 4 player in the state of Tennessee, the number one athlete in the nation. And he comes to Georgia and has quite the visit. It's pretty impressive. I mentioned some of the guys that we had breakout stories on, so let's touch on a few of those. You were talking about Brian Taylor, and I'm with you. When I read his comments, I'm like, he says, I don't know how to say it, but it's real different over there. There's a reason they're winning a lot.
Mm-hmm.
This kid sounds like he's ready to pop. I mean,
yeah. And
just from the quotes, I mean, you can give me his tone or what was going on, but he said all the right things. If you're one of the Georgia coaches, you're going to be like, man, we got this kid.
Yeah. And again, he said, I know I'm going to win. I know I'm going to be developed. And he mentioned something that not a lot of guys do. He says, I know there's going to be NFL scouts at practice all the time. So, and he mentioned too, like, hey, Amarius Mims, granted Amarius Mims probably ain't going to be there if Taylor commits and is there next year, but he's like, I want to go against Amarius Mims in practice. That is a first round draft pick that would be making me better. So that is like Georgia, that might as well be a Georgia coach talking through Brian Taylor. So he is, like I mentioned earlier, he is that kind of defensive end. He said the staff sees him anywhere from like a 9 tech into a 4 so kind of like Mykel Williams. He's similar size to Mykel Williams, I believe, if we've got him, if we got his player card in there. So, and again, I've mentioned this before with defensive linemen, when you've got a guy that's
6'6", 270.
Yeah. So more or less Mykel Williams. And when you've got one of these guys in the trenches, a 19, 20-year-old guy is going to be more just physically developed than a 17, 18-year-old guy. Now, does that mean Brian Taylor would definitely be contributing next year? No, but that's something you take into account with these junior college guys, especially ones, offensive line, defensive line.
Yeah, and Kirby's not going to waste a spot on somebody who doesn't think can come in and play.
Right.
And I don't mean waste a spot. It's just I was having this conversation earlier today. What Kirby's great at is roster management, because he's a great recruiter, yes, but he's also good at roster management, because you have 25 guys drafted, you have however many guys, 19 go in the portal, and you're sitting at 10-0.
Yep.
You, as we mentioned last week, you lost the you lost 2 top 15 draft picks. Somebody just posted a mock draft. You had Brock Bowers and Amarius Mims out. You mentioned Amarius Mims. Georgia still didn't lose a game. Most teams can't say they have 2 top 15 draft picks. Most teams, can't say, oh, our one top 15 guy was out. Georgia had both their guys out. They still won their games. And now Brock is back. Mims is too, and they look pretty good. They're going to go up to Tennessee and have. But Kirby Smart did mention on Tuesday and Wednesday the number of NFL scouts that were there. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Taylor here, he's like, yeah, I see how many scouts I have. And that is it's a big draw. Because you could be at a small school, and we always tell the kids at a small school, the NFL will find you. Well, it's a lot easier to find you when the scouts are coming to check out all your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This was the one I really wanted to talk about. This is kind of why I was excited about doing the show. Virginia Tech commit, Marcellus Barnes Jr. Again, if you look at his quotes, so we have at UJSports.com, you're like, looks good for Georgia. I mean, I'm not trying to be a homer. I'm not trying to be Mr. Positive, but I mean, it is what it is. Last week or a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how everything sucked. All these guys were trending away for Georgia, but right now, I like this. Yesterday made a big impact on everything. My trip down there really changed a lot. What do you read into that, Jed?
Yeah. Well, one, if there's anyone in this world that isn't Mr. Positive, it's Robbie Bolsey. So let's get that cleared up first. But with Marcellus, he visited for the Kentucky game, and obviously that was still kind of in the wake of Peyton Woodyard decommitting. That was after Georgia missed on KJ Bolden. And he was a guy who Georgia offered in the spring, and then he committed to Virginia Tech in the summer, and things kind of fell off. Georgia stayed in contact, and Lance is actually the one who did the interview, and he told Lance, and he told me a few weeks ago when I went to go see him, Georgia's been very respectful of my commitment. They tell me Virginia Tech's a great school. They wish me the best wherever I go. But they still want me in the class. So I think he could play corner or safety. He's actually a little bit like DeMello Jones in that he has played a lot of safety in his career and is playing more corner this year. So, he really loves Fran Brown. He's developed a really strong relationship with him. But to the part talking about changing a lot, it was he and his family sat down with Kirby Smart, and they were like, "We really don't want you to leave. We want you to stay. We want you to talk." And they kind of pitched him on the vision of what Georgia could do for him, what Georgia could do with him in the secondary. And yeah, I mean, Georgia is in a good spot for him. You talked about Trey Alexander and Georgia's working to flip him. I think Marcellus Barnes is probably more likely just because it seems like that relationship is farther along, goes back a little bit farther. But I mean, you look at his film here, he's not the biggest guy, but he will come up and hit you. He's got really good ball skills.
I watched the film. Bang!
He plays like
right there. Jesus.
He plays at the McCauley School in Chattanooga, which is, it's a private school, but it is serious grade A football there. That is a powerhouse program in Tennessee. So, yeah, I mean, I think Georgia's got a really good shot at.
I threw a flag.
Yeah.
He hit it so hard they threw a flag.
And I mean, I wouldn't read too much into, he's listed as a corner. Georgia doesn't need any more corners. I think it's you get defensive backs and you figure out the positions later. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, second game day visit. I know he's told me before he wants to, let the high school season get done before he makes any final decisions, which their state championship games are actually the Thursday before the SEC championship. So if they make it that far. So it could still be a couple weeks. Lance, I know we told you that he's going to sign early and he's trying to enroll early, but he's not sure, if the whole private school thing will work out.
Yeah, there's like a weird thing with his school.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back what you said right fast. In his first conversation with me, I asked him, I was like, so are they you play defense, you play both corner and safety. What do they see you as? Like, what does Georgia see you as? And he goes, they see me as both. And, at Georgia, if you're a defensive back, you have to play, you have to know like every position. I mean, look at Tyke Smith, look at Javon Bullard, and some of these other DBs. And he didn't have a problem with that. He was like, listen, put me anywhere. I'm, if I go there, I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we always talk about cornerbacks and safeties. Georgia's now recruiting guys as a star. They're like, this is definitely a position that we need. Look how often Georgia has a star on the field. It's like,
Nick yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's like, oh, Georgia runs the three. I mean, they really don't. They have it's like you said, they got a star on the field all the time. So,
and when you see a kid that can tackle like that, like Barnes does, because that star is so often in run support. I'm just saying you saw why Javon was so good there last year, and then when he moved back to safety, Tyke Smith has been your leading tackler, or at least right at the top so many times, and the evolution of him. People may think of it as like the third cornerback, or the fifth defensive back, but no, it's the NFL is putting a premium on the guys that can do that as well. So it's kind of fun to see what he can do.
Yeah.
We kind of tease it with the number one guy for the class of 2025. Elijah Griffith comes back to town again. How many times is this trips to Athens is it for Elijah?
I think it's like 3.
A lot. I know it's a second game day visit of the year for sure.
Him and Zane Walker are like battling for who visits.
And for a Savannah guy, we saw Nolan Smith as the game day picker and all that kind of stuff. And that means
I didn't even think about that.
I asked him about it and he said, yeah, it means a lot to see that kind of stuff because you think, hey, this isn't expected for guys from Savannah. Not everybody makes it out of Savannah. So I look at Nolan and think, that can be me one day. As far as others, he's really close with Warren Brinson, another Savannah guy. I've actually said he's good friends with Warren's sister. So there's that connection. Georgia was his first offer, I think, as an 8th grader. So that relationship with Trey Scott's been there for 3-4 years now. So I don't know. There's a lot pointing in Georgia's direction there. I mean, I think it's a lot of, as I say, local, Georgia, Clemson, South Carolina. He's very high on South Carolina, Shane Beamer's program over there. But I don't know, man. Every time you talk to him, it's like Georgia feels like home. It feels like I think I forget how he phrased it to me the other day. Like, I feel comfortable there. Like, it's not strange to be there. So, and he's a very, you talk to him and he, similar to the way Nolan is, Nolan was a great guy, very high character, always enjoyed interviewing him. Elijah's kind of the same way. Like, you would never know he does not have an ego at all befitting of a number one player in the country. So he definitely, would be a locker room fit, that kind of stuff. He's a really good player. He's like a 3-tech. He could be like a Jalen Carter, probably type an interior guy. And
God, he looks like Mason Smith.
Yeah, he said he wants to take officials next spring and summer and probably commit before his senior season. And I have a hard time envisioning him anywhere else but Georgia, personally. I mean, obviously, he could go to South Carolina. I wouldn't be shocked. He could even go to Clemson. I wouldn't be shocked. But there's so much pointing in Georgia's direction on this one that I ultimately would, if I had to pick where he ends up.
Damn it. You just ruined it.
Yep, that's.
I talked to a high school coach today that's going to face him this Friday, and they said, he's hard to stop. I mean, he lines up on one side, they've got Guyton on the other, and other guys. He's just dominant, and he makes a lot of play. He makes a lot of plays, but he's also seems like pretty unselfish as well from some of the local Savannah people that I've talked to, too. Kind of speaks to that, high motor, high character type kid that Jed was just talking about.
Did I just see him pick up a guy and start carrying him backwards?
Yeah. I mean, he's just.
Yeah, watch this. Picks the guy up. And starts carrying. He's just carrying him.
Kind of like Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter.
Yeah. I mean, you see where the comparison comes in.
Yeah, that's nuts. I hate him, man. Yeah, that's why I love watching that. This is a kid that you guys know. When I went to see him, I was very impressed with what he could do. I forgot to get out the video of him, but I'll do it. Jordan Allen, Buford kid. I know everyone starts rolling their eyes when we talk about Buford, but Georgia can't go 0 for 1,000 on Buford kids. They will get some of them. Kid's a great wide receiver, and he saw Georgia guys getting a lot of passes. So tell me about Jordan Allen.
Yeah, he's really good, man. Like, every time you watch, like, you go to Buford and you think, oh, Dylan Raiola's throwing all his passes to KJ Bolden, and he does, obviously, but Jordan Allen is also a standout on that team. Like, he's a little bit like Jacoby White in the 24 class. He's not the biggest guy. He's probably maybe a little bit. But he's very fast. He's very shifty and quick. And I think, he's got a close relationship with Brian McClendon. Montgomery Van Gorder, obviously being a Buford guy, that works in Georgia's favor. He's close with Jaden Perlotti, who's committed to Georgia, and just visited for the second week in a row, by the way, for everyone who freaks out.
I thought he was going to decommit.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've got a story coming on him, but he's so adamant that he's like, I just like to travel. He likes having fun with the recruiting process, I think. But the longer it goes, the more I think he ends up at Georgia. And just this whole thing is just generating excitement, I guess. But with Jordan Allen, he's really good. He's got like I said, strong relationship with McClendon. Everybody rolls their eyes at the Buford thing, like you said. I think working in Georgia's favor here is he's a little bit of a late bloomer, I guess. Like, Buford's had so many of these guys who are just studs from 8th grade, 9th grade year. Jordan Allen's really kind of sort of blown up this year. Georgia was the first really, really big program to offer him. Like, his biggest offers at the time were, I think, like Florida and Kansas State, I want to say, or something like that. So early belief means a lot to guys, and I think that could work in their favor with Jordan Allen. But if you're a receiver, you're gonna like what you saw on Friday night or Saturday night.
Love it. All right, let's switch gears and get to some questions. First one comes from Big Fatty 94, who's a great supporter of our show and of our website. He says the top 3 recruits left for Georgia, committed and uncommitted. So top 3 guys left for Georgia kind of grabbing this class.
Yeah, I'm assuming recruits means targets, I guess. So I would say Terrell Anderson from Grimsley, number one, the receiver, committed to NC State. I saw him Friday night. It was a very good-looking prospect. Georgia coaches are in contact all the time. Dylan Raiola texts him every day. So Georgia is, pushing hard there. Marcellus Barnes, who we've mentioned, a third flip target.
KJ Bolden.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really want to say it, but
the weekly KJ Bolden rumor.
It's Nasir Johnson. Nasir Johnson is committed to Florida, so that would be the third one. Just Georgia tries to get that one more 3-tech interior defensive line guy. Uncommitted, I guess Cam Michael. Brian Taylor, I guess, JUCO guy, but still uncommitted. And I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot left. There hasn't been much left for a while. I mean, you could throw Makai Boro in there, I guess. I don't think Georgia is as strong there as they were maybe at one point, but he's still a name to know, especially
Cam?
Makai Boro from Creekside, big guy, big interior guy.
Cam Michael, and who was the other one?
Brian Taylor.
Okay.
So, I think Boro might be more of a see how things shake out at other spots, how spots fill up. But as an uncommitted guy, he's a name to keep an eye on for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You never know.
We'll keep an eye on the BYU kid too. Is that list there?
Absolutely.
All right. This is a good one from Claremont. It says the rumor is we'll be losing a ton of kids to the portal this year. Is this a culture issue, bad locker room vibes, some of the players who are not good enough to crack the rotation, mutual decisions, etc.? Who wants that one?
Yeah,
Definitely not a culture issue, I don't think. I mean, you look at last year. Look at all what Georgia lost. I mean, they lost half their players to Nebraska, it seems like. But I mean, it's just kind of addition by subtraction. There's Georgia stacked at every position, and you've got to be able to compete. So I definitely don't think it's a culture issue. Some guys also can't crack the rotation. I mean, look at MJ Sherman, who was an absolute stud in high school, who I think we spoke to like once last year. After that, I was thinking that he was going to, start getting some more playing time, but he just wasn't able to crack the rotation and get enough playing time. So I definitely don't think it's a culture issue. I mean, that just happens all across college football too. Once the portal thing became more public, I mean, you see it a lot. And Kirby says that it's literally happens to every team. So
yeah, it's definitely every transfer out is not a indicator of some sort of interior program rot from the inside, right? It just AD Mitchell wasn't a culture thing. MJ Sherman, it happens in college football. Every team is going to lose guys. Some of it is mutual decisions, and I think the Georgia staff does a good job of being honest with guys. They meet with guys it's not in the off season, like in December, maybe between SEC. I mean, Kirby said they did some of that during the bye week. Hey, we talked about guys, where guys are at. And it's the way of college football. If you're not cracking their rotation at Georgia, then maybe you go to a Nebraska, Lance, like you mentioned, or you go to Arizona State, maybe. You go somewhere where you're going to get more playing time. So we got Louisville, we got Arkansas. Don Blaylock went to Georgia Tech.
Yeah,
it is what it is. So it goes both ways. Georgia brings in guys that they've played against, that they have relationships with in the past, and they lose guys for one reason or another. So,
and it also sometimes works out. I mean, look at Matt Landers at Arkansas. I think he caught maybe 2 touchdown passes versus the one that he caught here. I mean, it's just that's a small sample size, but I mean, it's just more. Sometimes they just want to produce more and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, for AD Mitchell, he loved it at Georgia, but want to be close to his daughter. Bear wanted more playing time. Question. Singletary, I was told he just didn't like practice at Georgia. I get it. So
it's not for everyone.
It is not for everyone. Even Matt Rule at Nebraska said, he had the all the NFL scouts came in and said this is the second hardest practice we've seen in the college ranks. And then, of course, being a room full of media members are like, well, who's the toughest? And he goes, oh, Georgia. He says, we'll catch up to them soon. And I don't think he meant he'd catch up to them in like the rankings or something like that, but he just meant in the intensity level of practice. And that intensity level drives some guys away. So I guess you could call that a culture issue or something like that, but it's usually playing time. I mean, MJ Sherman had been at Georgia a long time.
Yeah.
It didn't work out for him. Rylan Godey had played some, but he wasn't going to play over Oscar Delp or Lawson Lucky.
Right.
Greg Scruggs. Jacob Hood. Did you see any of those guys played a lot for Georgia? Or in the future?
No, I mean, they just, like I said, especially on that offensive line, Georgia's so loaded.
And like Tresman Marshall worked out really well because he's played some good ball for Alabama.
Yeah.
Works for him. All right. Get back to this one. I love this one from Blackshear UGA. How many Texas A&M kids do we take?
All of them. All right, now they've got the answer everybody wants to hear. I don't know. I mean, no one's in the portal yet except for Raymond Cottrell, who was committed to Georgia at one point, funny enough. But I mean, you speculate to broadly cover the transfer portal stuff. Kirby has said we look for guys, one, we played against, like Dom Lovett last year, towards Georgia before he got hurt. Ra Thomas, Georgia played against Mississippi State, and or guys we've had relationships with dating back to high school. So if you think Texas A&M, Georgia recruited LT Overton very hard. They recruited Shamar Stewart very hard. They recruited Walter Nolan. That one kind of faded out more so earlier on in the process. I don't really remember Georgia being in it super hard with Evan Stewart. Not to say they can't go get him or wouldn't be interested. I don't remember. Chase Pasantis was an offensive lineman who Georgia was in it with till the end, who I think is starting for them at one of the spots up front. So I think those are the criteria Kirby looks for. But again, the guys got to enter the portal first. So
no, they don't. Hey, come on, better
before we guess who's going to go, we got to know who's in. So I don't like speculating on guys who are going to go in from Georgia or any other schools just because we don't know. Like if you asked me last year at this time, I wouldn't have said A.D. Mitchell was going to leave. I wouldn't have said what's his name, Barry Alexander was going to leave. So
let's look at it this way though. I just pulled up their commitment list. So maybe you don't get a kid transfer out, but maybe someone who's currently committed that you could go steal. Yeah. So I'm trying to look. It feels completely different than it did a couple of years ago when they had that rumored $30 million class. And this is the number 9 class in the nation, but it's just not as 5-star heavy. There's not even one 5-star on here, but there's some really good 4-stars. But it just doesn't feel like that. The ridiculous last 2 classes they had for this is a great class. I mean, Deborah Gatling from Alpharetta, we've covered him before. Jordan Lockhart, we've covered him before. A lot of names on here. Cam Coleman, talked about him. But I don't know where Georgia didn't have a lot of room left.
No.
Yeah, and I think Cam Coleman has been a guy for a couple of weeks. We've wondered, does Georgia get him back on campus? That didn't happen. I know Auburn's in it pretty good, trying to flip him. I believe Florida State is. I think he actually visited Florida State for the Miami game.
Ooh, interesting.
I think. So that is one. But I mean, again, it doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot of momentum there.
Yeah.
Pardon me, getting up close and personal. I mean, Georgia didn't really push hard for DeBron Gatling out of Milton.
We covered it, but it didn't. You're right. It wasn't like they were in the running for.
I mean, there was a brief little window right when Brian McClendon got hired that it seemed like Georgia might have a little kick of momentum, but that quickly died. So. Yeah, I mean, not a ton of
I don't see that happening
there unless somebody comes out of nowhere. And again, I've mentioned it on the board a few times. That week in December between after the SEC championship is going to be interesting to see what committed guys from elsewhere just pop up on campus, because you can sneak into campus a lot easier when there's not a game going on. So if you're a commit that you didn't want, didn't want photos and all these reports coming out about you, that's the time to do it. So, but yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I will say I don't know.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's okay.
But again, there are a lot of guys on that roster that Georgia recruited hard coming out of high school. So there's definitely some prior relationships there.
Yeah, and they brought one in. They transferred. Smoke Bowie transferred in, and it didn't work out. From CBuck 11, do you expect Brian Taylor and Jaden Hamlin in this class?
I don't think Hamlin will be in the class. Yeah, sure. I'll play along. I think Taylor ends up in the class. I think you can get Taylor as your last 5-tech defensive end type, and then as your interior guy, you could get Nasir Johnson. You can maybe get Makai Boyro if that doesn't work out. I think there's a lot more other options you could go to maybe at interior than at 5-tech. So yeah, I think they get Brian Taylor.
From Charlie G75, any chance Xavier will visit UGA before signing day?
I mean, there was smoke, I feel like, a few weeks ago that, maybe things kind of shifted downward Florida, like they kind of still are. But nah, I don't expect but he's one of those guys, like Jed mentioned, that could sneak in,
Yeah, and I mean, if Florida
championship.
I mean, if Florida loses to, I don't know who they play this week, and then they got Florida State to end the year. So, I mean, if Florida loses out, they'll be 6-6 maybe, or 5-7. So,
Did they play LSU yet?
Yeah,
they played LSU last week. So, I mean, they could be.
That real close game back and forth. But who they got this week? It's a good team.
Maybe who do they play this week? While I'm clacking away here. So I mean, Florida could lose out from the Georgia game if they don't lose.
Yeah, we mentioned that a few weeks ago. It was like
so they play at Missouri. They play at Missouri Saturday night.
It's a loss.
So they're in all likelihood. I would pick Florida to lose both of these games. They'd be 5-7, no bowl game for the first time, and who knows how long at Florida. So there won't be a whole lot of happy, sunny feelings, I would think, at Florida coming out of. And listen, there, something that's not talked about, there could be staff changes. If whoever the DBs, I think Corey Raymond is in Florida, if he leaves, then all bets are off. So again, that December period is going to be very interesting with coaching changes, guys sneaking onto campus, whatever. So, it's definitely possible. I mean, the question was, is it possible? It's definitely possible. It's just a matter of, Georgia's been trying to get him. If they can finally convince him to get on campus, then that's kind of the next step in the pursuit there.
I would say before, if Barnes ends up flipping, do you think that they still take Phil Samana, however you say his name?
It's possible. It's possible for sure. I mean, Kirby loves defensive backs. He's always talking about, we don't have enough defensive backs. We need more numbers there. So yeah, I think that could be a guy you'd make some room for.
Makes sense. All right. Brewdog08 says, which wide receiver target are you the most excited about, considering the skill set and realistic chances they will choose Georgia? Who is your wide receiver target you'd be the most excited about?
I mean, I'll throw it out there since I saw him. Terrell Anderson from Grinsley really impressed me Friday night. Kirby Smart and company have compared him to George Pickens. He wears number 1, which was kind of funny, but there's something about the way he moves or runs or I can't put my finger on it, but it reminds me of Pickens too, like his body control, I guess is a good way to say it. So, Trent has said on the show before, Georgia wants a big body. He's 6'3", he's probably 190, pushing 200 pounds. So it definitely fits the physical mold. And I think he could be he's, I think, a 3-star maybe. But so I kind of screwed that one up, but he's a guy that I think could be a contributor that Georgia kind of flips late. So I really like Terrell Anderson. Georgia has prioritized him over the past couple months for a reason. Yeah. And I think they got a good shot at flipping him from NC State.
I could have sworn you were going to say Sokobi.
Oh, if we're including commits in this, then yes, Sokobi White. I love Sokobi White. Fantastic. I thought we were just talking about targets. Yeah, Sokobi White's awesome.
Yeah, he had a heck of a game this past Friday. And
Dude, hey, look, with any commit is still a target until they stop.
That's true. Yeah, so Kobe White, dude, is and he is I've seen that dude just destroy people at 7-on-7s, at camps. He's got that like dog mentality in him on the field too. Like he will go at you on the football field. So yeah, I really likes Kobe White a lot.
Yeah.
Great kid.
And he's been committed for, over a year now, and he's never really wavered at all. Like I don't even think he's taken another visit anywhere. And it's been locked in for a while with Kobe White. So Georgia's got a really good one there.
And I hate to do this, but I kind of really don't hate it. But Brewdog's questions like, considering skill set and realistic chances, they will choose us. That's two things together. And if you can give me which one I'd be the most excited about, I'd put KJ Bolden back out there as a wide receiver prospect. He's really, really good. Now, skill set, huge. Chance he picks Georgia, very small, but that still averages out as maybe the guy I'd be most excited about to see. And again, I will never bet against Kirby on signing day.
Yeah.
I won't do it. Again, I'm not saying you get KJ. He seems very committed to FSU, and FSU they're coming hard for a lot of the Georgia commits. They're coming after Elias. They're coming after some other kids. That's who they are. They're good at it. And just like Georgia sees somebody at Virginia Tech they want, they come after them. They know how to recruit down there. They're good at it. And Georgia's good at keeping guys. So that's why that commitment the recruitment's never over, but you have the advantage if they've committed to you. So I'll just mention him as if I felt like he was still in the running, I'd be a lot more excited, but he's really, really good. Maybe I'm probably watching too many Dylan Raiola highlights. From GOPUGA, no names needed, but do you know of any 2024 high-ranked players who have quietly visited in the last few weeks or have told you they're planning to visit UGA soon and they are not current commits? And how many of our current commits will not sign with the Dogs on signing day?
Yeah, question one, not really, because, again, I think a lot of that is going to happen after the season because, again, you can just sneak in on, like, a Tuesday if you want to and even a Saturday, and there's no game, there's no press, no fanfare, whatever.
A lot of us do it for a practice. You can watch practice.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't really heard – Marcellus Barnes, popped up kind of unannounced at the Kentucky game. And he told you, Lance, he didn't really put out a whole lot of notice that he was showing up for the Ole Miss game either. But
he wanted to surprise the staff or some staff.
Yeah. So I haven't really heard haven't really heard too much yet. But I can just about guarantee there's going to be some guys committed elsewhere that are going to show up between December 2nd and December 20th.
Yeah, so ask the question again in a couple of weeks.
Exactly.
And then anybody on this list you think does not sign with Georgia?
Would Nitro be? I know they kind of weathered whatever storm.
Yeah, I think Georgia there were some rumblings about Nitro Tuggle there for a while. I think Georgia's gotten through it. He visited 2 weekends in a row as well from Indiana. So that is noteworthy for sure. History and whatever will tell you that there might be, a couple of late flips, but I don't really, no one guy stands out as really likely to flip. Jaden Riddell has listened to Missouri, but that was a phase that's passed.
Loves UGA.
If you look at positions where there's a lot of depth, there's 3 running backs. Does someone come get Dwight Phillips late? I don't know.
There's 6 offensive linemen committed.
Yeah. So
would you be shocked if 5 signed?
No, not at all. Right. Not at all.
Some of the
and the other thing is, this is the class you're about to sign. You're like, okay, let's put together your senior film. And you look at it and go, hey, and I won't mention a kid because it'll get taken out of context, but hey, Mr. 4-star, we don't see you fitting in here. You're committed. We'll honor it. You can come, and I've known them do this. Say, look, you made a commitment to us. We'll make a commitment to you. You can come be here, but we don't expect you to get a lot of playing time. Because like, wow, really? Okay, I'll go somewhere else where I think I got better shots. And you'd much rather know that now than get there. And they're like, yeah, we never really thought you'd start. So sometimes you look at their senior film and you're like, you didn't quite grow, or you didn't quite progress, or you're just not quite fitting what we're doing now. So that conversation can happen between now and then.
I would think out of all the offensive linemen, would it be Marcus Harrison? Because it seems like some of the other guys have visited recently. I know that Malachi Tolliver's in-state has been there I've seen him at like 3 or 4 games. You've got the kid from Texas, Michael. Is it Uni? Now I've heard strong relationship, and then Marcus. I feel like they would favor Marcus Easley and Daniel Calhoun. Daniel Calhoun's definitely, I feel like, a lock with Georgia for as many times as we've seen him this year. And he's
how many times has Nair Daniels come down from New Jersey?
Exactly. I believe he's only been to 1 game this year. I can't recall which game it is.
It's tough, when you play on Friday night, and up there they play on Saturday. Whereas we were seeing with Ryan Puglisi, it's like my games are on Saturdays. So, all right, last question, and then we'll wrap up the show here. From Space Pope 3, which 2025 recruits is Georgia in the best shape for as of now? Just give me 1 or 2.
Yeah, Zayden Walker for sure. Cortez Smith, I mentioned earlier.
Elijah Griffin.
Yeah, Georgia's in very good shape with Elijah Griffin.
I would say David Sanders, just from what I've heard from some people out of Charlotte. I know Roddy's going to see him Friday night, but he's been to a game this year. And I think the reviews were glowing after that visit.
Yeah, that's a good one. Again, it's still early, but like it's quickly coming into focus, especially once these guys sign. Most of this class is signing in December, so it's that 25 class is going to come into focus very quickly. So, but yeah, Georgia in-state especially, I think, could be a very strong class for Georgia in 2025.
Apparently, our pros tell us that Georgia's ranked number 1 in the college football poll.
Mm-hmm.
Not shocked.
No, not after that impressive performance this weekend again.
Yeah.
So all these, we started the show talking about all these guys that came in to visit Georgia this weekend, and then they show up and they see Georgia whip number 9 Ole Miss. The offense shows out, the wide receivers show out, the tight end show out, the quarterback does. Running backs do their thing. Defense. And here's the thing. What did you see on defense? It's a true freshman inside linebacker get named SEC Freshman of the Week. Leads the team in tackles. You're like, they let true freshmen play here. They're like, yeah, by the way, Mikael Williams was a true freshman last year, And so Malachi Starks was as well. And they're like, wow, the best players get to play. And they were struggling. Then they shut them down. And they shut down that juggernaut offense. And then you're sitting there on your phone, you're scrolling, you're on TikTok or something. Hey, Georgia just moved up to number 1. I was there. I saw this game. Now they're number 1. I don't think the weekend could have gone better for Georgia. The only thing is missing was some commits of maybe 2025, 2026 kids. But there were a lot of those there, and that is going to make a very strong impression. And every guy that you guys wrote about, and y'all did a fantastic job. You can tell that Georgia moved the needle in every one of them so far. So,
yeah,
love it. There's our boy Foster Moss and the damn Beast Media. We love it. Josh Moody and Richard S., Jimmy, and Christy. Anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. We're gonna. Oh man, we hit it right on. An hour. I didn't even plan to go that far. It's good timing. Again, the list works out. We will be back hopefully next. We got to make a decision about next Monday. That is Thanksgiving week. We'll talk about it off the air, but more than likely we'll be back next Monday at 8:30. But just remember, every week, Georgia recruiting, rumors versus facts. 8:30 on either this YouTube channel or this Facebook page. We'll see you then.